There are three main questions humans try to find the answer for. What is the meaning of life? Where are all the second socks I never threw away by myself? And are films better than books? Today, we're going to answer to one of them, and no, I don't know where your second sock is, nobody knows. Welcome to the greatest, the most objective, and epic, or not really, gladiator match in the history of the world. Novel Wars, Call of the Wild Edition. Stay tuned.
These men needed dogs. Big dogs. Strong muscle. Hold their foot.
Good morning there, bud.
What? Neither house dog?
Before we begin, let me remind you to join our friendly community by subscribing to the channel. It will significantly help us to grow. Feel welcome, and back to the video. The rules are simple. That's how my super thoughtful and innovative evaluating scheme Golden Potatoes works. In essence, we'll compare the novel written by Jack London and its recent movie adaptation by Disney based on 5 criteria. For each, a maximum of 5 points will be given to a movie. 5 means that the film made something much better than the original, 3 that both are similar, and 1 if it's, well, garbage. In the end, we'll sum up all of them and multiply by 4 to see the score out of 100. Without further ado, let's begin. Setting. This category is more superficial, since we talk about technical aspects. How convincing a film adaptation looked compared to the book? Well, the best short answer might be like a Disney movie. I think it's not a secret that Disney has a standardized Hollywood formula for its movies, with a few good and bad exceptions. It includes a paradoxical CGI, which is stunning and average at the same time. Don't get me wrong, not because it's terrible, but because it's always on the same level, which is not bad though. So how does that work in our example? To my surprise, I actually liked what they've done for the film. In the movie, Buck is played by a 51-year-old former Circuit du Soleil performer Terry Notary, who was digitally transformed into a shepherd. I know many people complain about Buck being a CGI dog, and argue that the trained live dog is a better option as proved by Hachi, a dog's tale. I'm not crying, I'm a man. But there is a difference. A previous adaptation of London's novel used the real dogs as actors, but were forced to focus on the human in the story, John Thornton, which is, hey, fundamentally wrong. Isn't it a story of a sold out as a sled dog during the Cold Rush, not a random guy? Since the whole novel is built on emotions and feelings of Buck, portraying them on the screen accurately with a real dog is as hard as watching the Star Wars New Year special till the end. In other words, impossible? But the visual effect producer of the film, Ryan Stafford, said, "That's why we use CGI characters. You can craft a performance. You can make it an emotional experience or a comedic experience or whatever the scene calls for. And film's Buck does have emotions. You can actually see him licking a snowflake off his nose with not just comedic effect, but with the realization of how different a new environment is for him. His facial expression can accurately show when he's happy or sad, confident or confused, scared and broke. He can even express disapproval to John Thornton when he drinks too much alcohol. What a good dog, Buck. Give me 5.
I came up here.
Opinions about Buck's surrealistic look can be different, but the team's efforts to pull off the human-dog relationships out of the computer model were colossal. They were carefully examining the criticism around recently released The Lion King about characters lacking the emotional expressiveness. On the other hand, the problem with Buck was precisely the opposite. He looked too expressive and anthropomorphic. So their goal was kind of to find a golden middle between cartoonish dog and over-realistic Simba, which I believe they achieved. After all the visual effects for Call of the Wild were handled by moving picture company that was also responsible for Lion King, so they could directly implement what they have learned from their mistakes. What do we have apart from that? beautifully crafted views, which were close to how the setting looked in my head while reading the book. John Powell composed the music score, dramatic in the moments of thrill and suspense, calm in the moments of peace. Compared to the book, though, I felt film soundtracks had many adventurous themes, not typical for London's creation, which is understandable since it's a PG-13 Disney adventures movie, you know? But the overall setting was working for a film, even though nothing too special can be said either. Once the credits appear on the screen, you already forget all the music and graphics as if you've never seen them. That is why a solid 3 stars for the setting is probably the best. It could accurately depict the world created by Jack London, but didn't stand out too much so that our heads would just explode. Right in the middle. Good job, Ryan Stafford, but let's move on. Overall tone and emotions. When it was only announced that Disney is adapting London's Call of the Wild, I was like, how does that even supposed to work? PG-13, huh? I was so excited about the man in the red sweater. Blood flowing from nose and mouth and ears, his beautiful coat spread and flecked with bloody slaver. Chpunk! One attack and he... Already a base? What are you doing, Buck? No! Stand up, come on! Bad dog! But she lay there limp and lifeless in the bloody, trampled snow, almost literally torn to pieces, the swan half-breed standing over her and cursing horribly. It doesn't even bother to show us this important for Buck's growth moments. The ice is too thin and cracked under the weight so that all dogs painfully... Oh wait, they survived and ran to the forest, hooray! The immense disappointment was Pete's. There was a crunch of breaking bones, and the white dog faced him on 3 legs, and Buck made his kill and found it good. Nope, the power of hope and friendship. Run, Barry, run! And Speed survives and just... leaves? You better do a sequel, Disney, to redeem my man Speeds. He deserved a better ending. I do believe that violence can be beneficial for a movie, but not necessarily if something is given to us instead. Did the film propose this alternative to us? They've tried to, and I do understand it's a family movie with a non-violent rating. I really love the dynamics between Buck and Thornton towards the end, but we will talk about that later. For the rest of the film, it feels as if the story lost its soul. Violence in the book was for a reason. Buck was beaten again and again by a man in the red sweater to teach him the law of clap and thank, which has a massive impact on Buck's decisions throughout the whole story. In the film, I don't believe that. Later, movie narrator tells us that Buck has lost but not destroyed, as it was in the book, but I don't think so, I don't believe that. Without this introductory scene to the world of violence, you don't feel danger for characters for the rest of the film. And when finally this moment of getting over his fears comes, it just doesn't work. There is no actual clap and fang thing in the movie, which was responsible for Buck's growth. And okay, I can agree with not showing other dogs' deaths. But the confrontation between Buck and Speeds was the most exciting and brutal part of the story, at least for me. Not because I wanted action, but because the growing tension between 2 leaders in the book was essential to show basically what is the cost of being at the top. How hard it actually is to achieve respect, leadership. That's why Buck's win over Speeds was fast and pointless. It's unlikely that he could learn a lot from their short run-in. Therefore, Buck's sudden desire to be a leader in the movie makes no sense to me. In the book, it really was a long-awaited deserving moment for him and readers. Still, in the movie, it's more like Buck accidentally discovered the feeling of being the supreme dog and selfishly has started to treat himself as a true leader. Just for fairness, some moments have drastically improved the emotional tone of the story. We will mention them later, but they don't save the film from its soft feeling. Without London's portrayal of the brutal nature, the film felt too sentimental and moralistic, which is again not bad by definition, but it just wasn't executed well. 2 sad Speeds out of 5. Your time will come, buddy. Characters. Let's start with the most straightforward characters. Disappointment. Next. Okay, I'm just kidding. Frances and Pirold. I know that I pronounced their names in the wrong way, but who cares? At first, I wasn't sure what to feel about them. Basically, the film turned too rough and not hesitate to use the fourth man with a broken English into a couple of lovable and kind masters for whom the delivery of mails brings happiness? What? But after a complex thinking process, I realized that it's actually a positive change. Book's version of Piralt and Franquist was suitable for London's cruel setting, but they didn't feel as standalone characters, more like plot tools for Buck's maturity. Buck's no affection for them, but him growing honesty to respect them, perfectly describes that. At the same time, film versions improved both of them by showing the meaning behind their actions, without losing the experience and respect for their characters shown in the book.
Never been on time.
The same applies to Hal. His character is still a caricature with no signs of rational logic, but it's funny. And also, by leaving him alive and turning him into the main antagonist, they basically achieved two things. Firstly, they elevated the tension in the end. In the book, the only reason I was afraid for Thornton is that such a violent book couldn't end so happily. And also I've read the spoiler that he dies on the first page of my book. Lol. Anyways, in the movie we know that Hal is coming, so we do have a fear for Thornton's life. Secondly, the ending made more sense to me in the film than in the novel. Without going into the racial aspects of Jihad Indian tribe, their appearance was abrupt in the negative sense. I suspect it was made by Jack London to show that anything can happen in real life, even if there was no other sign of the coming danger, but for me it was too out of nowhere. So making Hal the murderer of John maybe wasn't too meaningful, but at least made sense? Does that make sense? John Thornton is easily the best thing about the movie, and not only cause it's Harrison Ford. I'm not a fanboy, it's... Ford's character appears 3 times throughout the film, compared to the book when he is introduced in the last chapters. It makes his introduction smoother and more organic. His John is not a random kind dude in Alaska who hangs out with Buck. Since filmmakers made John's background story more profound, his relationship with Buck improved as well. You can genuinely feel that they need each other. London's John had other people around him. Ford's John is alone. London's John didn't have a personal drama. Ford's John is drinking too much, recovering from the death of his son. He doesn't even need the gold, whereas in the book he wouldn't hesitate to find it. Yeah, I get it, it's a classical Hollywood man with dog story, but it works as it should, so why not? Presumably, for London, Thornton was just another stop in the path of Buck, not the destination, and that's why he didn't really spend time developing his character. But now we have an A-rank Hollywood star portraying his character. Quickly, give him a backstory, more drama, I said more drama! Ironically, when it comes to dogs in the movie, problems begin. I've already mentioned Spitz. I realize they don't have enough time to show the rivalry between him and Buck. It's okay that they don't have it, but they could have made him bigger at least? I mean, look at him. Am I supposed to fear for Buck here or Spitz? Why is he so big? Before you've started typing hating comments, let me explain. I do remember how strongly Jack London was highlighting the size of Buck and how strong he is. But on the other hand, Spitz wasn't so much smaller, and in fact was a significant threat for Buck even during their last fight. Both the novel and film show that Buck could win the contest by doing a smart maneuver aside. In the novel, it really feels that Buck was going to lose if he wasn't as sharp as he is. Do you feel the same way here? Be honest. It's not a Spitz that was fighting till the last breath, looks more like a Marvel's Flash bullying Holland's Peter Parker. And finally Buck. He has a broader backstory that depicts him as someone who doesn't realize the consequences of his actions, which is amazing for his development. Since his relationships with John are stronger there, his internal struggle between being with John and finding his purpose in life is more believable. The problem appears right in the middle of it. It's not a golden rush that truly really affects Buck, but John. Obviously, some moments like that one was highly demonstrative of Buck's character development, but the rest was just improbable and meh. He's immature until the very end of the story, and even then he isn't changed for 100%. Don't get me wrong, it's not that it is bad, it's totally fine, but since we compare books and films, it would be fair to subjectively say it's not Buck I knew from the book. So what do we have then? Wise and well-developed human characters but problematic dog characters. But it seems it's another 3 stars. Sorry Harrison Ford, there is no way I can change that. Or maybe there is. 4 Harrison Fords out of 5. What a man. Structure. I won't spend too much time on it cause that's an easy one. I didn't like the lack of violence in the movie, but I also understand it was inevitable for PG-13, and knowing that filmmakers could advance the story by twisting the structure a little bit. The middle part of the book about Buck's moral growth was significantly reduced, but somehow it is the right decision? Due to Disney's age restrictions, there was no way for a film to show how the wild nature nurtured Buck's spirit accurately. So instead, they elongated the storyline with John Thornton. That was the core of the whole film and its ideas. You can argue that it made film totally different from the original, but who said it make it worse? Perhaps it's a different movie after all, but the one who took from the original all the good aspects and built on them its own great story. Besides, they've shown more background stories of the main characters. But more important is how they creatively crafted new scenes by combining different moments from the novel. For example, this scene of Buck saving the wolf. In the book, we had a moment when Buck was showing his enormous strength in front of the crowd of people by pulling the large sled, and also when Buck showed his smartness and brave nature by saving John, who fell in the river. Instead of showing both moments separately, the movie combined them into the same river scene but with a wolf. As a result, we witness how strong he is even compared to wolves, we see how brave he is, and it also established a connection between him and his ancestors. Not every decision of a film was great, but it really tried to incorporate the best parts of the original with the new ideas. The best example of a good idea was with wolves. From time to time, they were showing the spirit of the wolf to Buck as the call of his ancestors, which I found especially amusing. An exciting innovation. Therefore, personally, I'm in love with what they've done. $5 for Buck, ladies and gentlemen. Themes and idea. Here we go, the most challenging part of the video. What can I say? It's hard to compare the film with the book if both have differentiated themes. What makes it even more difficult is that the topics covered in the book are not so typical as well. Let's start with the similarities. The core of the story is the theme of growing up and taking the responsibility of your life. The way of expressing this theme, though, was a little bit different. In Jack London's version, it was more about accepting the either you or me mindset, since his world is much more brutal with less justice. But the movie version is more modern and has a lighter mood, which makes it more understandable and accessible for a young growing-up audience. On the other hand, such a moralistic and simple story might have less effective influence, since harsh words and stories cause stronger reactions in the audience.
Exactly.
Just remember the latest Parasite and Joker.
Developed by the late.
On the other hand, I believe the film has handled with an ending much better. When I was reading the novel, I had a feeling that Buck didn't really make any choice by himself. Those were the outer events that have led him to where he ended up. If I remember correctly, the only reason why he has left John's camp is that the tribe killed all of them. The same has happened with John in the movie, but filmmakers made one crucial change. Even if Hal didn't find Buck and John, their paths would still be separated. It was their beforehand decision to continue their own journeys and basically live their life, not just the combination of circumstances. In other words, the way this movie adaptation teaches us to have a responsibility for moving forward with our life is much more illustrative. Methods of portraying the idea in both the novel and movie have their pros and cons, so it's hard to say which one is more superior. In addition, there are many other topics that are covered in the movie but not book. For example, having a higher purpose of living for others. Vice versa, London explores how civilized our civilization really is. Is it better to live in the socialistic community, etc. Neither of them exceeds another in any way, and that's why giving 3 stars out of 5 is the most democratic choice I can make. I think it's a good one, since London's ideas are simple but complex at the same time. Therefore, making an equally wise adaptation limited with time is hard work, but Disney never disappoints. Almost. The time has come, geeks. We shall now ask the supreme golden potato what his ultimate verdict is his ultimate answer to life, the universe and everything. And, ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate answer is Call of the Wild consists of 68% of gold. Excellent job, Disney. You made a good, strong film adaptation of a book. Wow, what an amazing battle that was. Although all the hype about the film went down many months ago. Thank you for being with us until the very end. Share your opinion about the film, book or video in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel if you would want to see more novel wars and uncommon interpretations of movies. So long, and thanks for all the fish!